Hello everyone and welcome again to another C++ tutorial for absolute beginners. This is going to be the 8th video in the series, and we are going to cover strings and arrays. In the last video we went over a bunch of variable types and the rules of scope and visibility. So the reason that I've neglected to cover string all the way up until this time is because string really isn't a variable type in C++. So if I just type string right here and then I type int below it, notice that string does not get bolded while int does, and so does char. Int and char and float and all those other variable types are bolded because they are default variable types in the C++ language. They are inherent of C++. String, however, is not a built-in variable type of C++. That's not to say it isn't useful or in some cases necessary. So in this video we're going to learn what string is, what it's actually doing to compensate, because there's no actual string variable. So how does that work? But we're going to start off now with arrays. And arrays can be lifesavers because an array is a series of variables. So let's say I have a bunch of integer variables. I've got int x1, int x2, int x3, int x4, and on and on and on and on. I really don't want to sit here and type int x6 forever and ever and ever. Now I'm just going to change this to C for our little stoppage at the end of the program here. But I don't want to type int x a bunch of times. If these are all going to have different values, but they're all going to be a part of x, I've decided that they're related somehow. But I need all of them. You don't want to have to type int that many times and create that many variables. It's not efficient, it's very hard to follow, and there's a better way to do it. And that better way to do it is an array. An array is just a list of variables. In other programming languages, it is called a list. So the way an array works is really, really simple and elegant. So we're going to create that in x. So this is you're 2/3 of the way of setting up an array right here. So we just declare a variable of a certain type, in this case int, and we give it a name, in this case x. And then we put an opening square brace and a closing square brace after the name of the variable. So what this has done is it's created an array. Like an array is simply a list. So now we have a list of integer variables that can be referenced by x. So I can put a number in these brackets. So now I've specified that I have created an array of 5 integers named x. So this array now has 5 integers in it. And I can add values to the array when I initialize it, just like I do anything else, just with a little syntactical change. So we do an opening square brace like we have for our functions, and we just list the values. So let's go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 5 values. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we separate each value by a comma, and then we end with another square brace. So let's compile this. Runs fine. We get to our sin_c function, and we return 0. Program exits. So this is a syntactically correct, perfectly fine statement, and it's an array of 5 integers. So how do we then access those 5 integers? In a very similar syntax to how we created it. So let's go cout x, and then we have our brackets, and let's go 1. So let's just run that and see what it does. It prints out 1. Excellent. So we accessed the array, and we accessed actually the second item in the array. To access the first item in the array, it's 0. So that, if you didn't understand that, I'm going to explain it more because this is very, very important, and even I forget this sometimes when working with arrays. We have an array of 5 integers. The last value in that array is not 5, it's 4. If we say, please print out the 5th value in the array, it doesn't like that. So it only has 5 values, 0 being the index of the first value. When I say index, I mean like the point at which it is in the array. So the index 0 is the first value, index 1 is the second value, index 2 is the third value, index 3 is the fourth value, and index 4 is the 5th value in the array. So that's just kind of a basic introduction to arrays. They'll make more sense in a little bit when we use them a little bit more, and when you actually have a need to make one, you'll realize, oh, this would be a great time to use an array. So just another little thing we can do here is make an array of indefinite size. So when we do that, just say int x bracket bracket with no number in between, we've just created a array of variable size. So we can initialize it now, add variables to it, stuff like that. So we can just initialize it with a list, 1, 2, 5. So now we have an array of 3 things. Let's reference the second thing in the list. It'll be a 2. So just really basic array management here. I'll go into a lot more detail with arrays when you use them in a later video. But I really introduce them now because of what a string actually is. Now, on the most basic level, when we use a string in C++, we're using an array of character variables. And if you remember, a character variable is just a single letter. So when we have char C down here, that's saying I've got a variable that can hold one letter. So for example, L, H, 0, X, Y, Z. One character per variable. But if I string a bunch of these character variables together, I create a array of character variables, or a string. So let's try that now. We have an indefinitely sized array, so let's just add some chars to it. So let's add an H, and remember, character variables have single quotations around them, and they're one letter, so don't try to be a hero and add a bunch of letters here. E, L, pretty sure you can all figure out what I'm typing here. H-E-L-L, O, now we can just do a blank character, W, comma, O, comma, R, comma, bear with me, comma, D. Hopefully I did that syntactically correct, but we have now created an array of character variables. So if we cout x0, whoops, let's see, probably did something nasty here. Okay, so in any programming application, you always make mistakes, and I forgot a semicolon. So teach me to look at my code. At least I didn't forget like a single quotation or something like that. But just to show you, sometimes the error message that you get aren't that descriptive, and when you troubleshoot, it's just going to be a matter of going back and looking at your code to figure out where you messed up. So cout 0, we had an H. So now we can just kind of go through, and I'm not going to print out the whole thing, but and then 3. So now we that's funny. I didn't do that on purpose, but whatever. LOL. You know. Now, as you can see, this is going to be a really long and obnoxious process if I want to print out the entire string, and I don't necessarily know how long it is. When we get into more array management and stuff like that, we'll figure out more how to do this, and you'll learn how to properly manage the array in an effective way. But this is just kind of, on the most basic level, when we do get into string, this is what it is. It's literally an array of char variables, character variables. So I think we've covered the background of what a string actually is, where I feel comfortable teaching you how to use it, because I don't want you just using string and just be like, oh, it's a string variable that has a bunch of, this is just a string of stuff. It's not a string of stuff. It is an array of character variables. So remember that. So here we go. This is how we do a string. So we go up here to the top of the program, and we do our include. So we do our number sign, include, and then a less than sign, string, greater than sign. And I'm not sure if I've covered this before, but I'll cover it again. When you do the less than and greater than sign when you're including something, that means the compiler already knows where it is. It's not another header file or something that you've created by yourself. The compiler knows where all of these libraries are, and it will find them, and by putting them in these braces, you're telling the compiler, oh, I know where this is, let me find it. So now we've included string, and now we are good to go with our string variable. So it works just like any other variable. You type string, let's call it x, and we've just created a string variable x. We can compile, and it will run perfectly, signifying that string has been included and this worked correctly. If you have any trouble with that, let me know. There might be some compiler dependencies, like I said. If the compiler didn't include that for some reason, you might be stuck using an array of chars, which isn't the end of the world, trust me. So then we can set string x equal to, and now instead of using a single quotation, we will use a double quotation, just like you are probably familiar with. So string hello world. So it looks very similar to what a cout statement would look like. And then we can cout x, and we will get hello world. So that is a string variable. We can also use string variables to get input. So if we just create that string variable, and then instead of a cout, we do a sin function, cin, we can get input into our variable, and then we can print it back out. So we can do our endl to put it on a new line, and then we can cout x. So let's try that. Hello world! Exclamation point. And that's exactly what you did. But you noticed this is not the most reliable at the moment, so I'm not sure why that didn't work. I remember there is a if you use sin, then that will not work. Hello world. And you saw it just printed hello there before it quit rapidly. So we can just put a breakpoint right there by clicking in the margin over here. So when the program gets here, it will stop. So hello world. I guess breakpoint didn't work there. Alright, well, anyway, since you had the space in there with the cin function, it didn't take it. So that's just going to be something you might have to work around a little bit. So as a challenge in this video, I would like to challenge you to make a program that uses a string variable to get the name of someone. So you see out, what is your name? And then you get their input, and then you say, your name is, and you print that back out to them. And I'd like you to try to use both string, and if you're really up to the challenge, try to use char. Feel free to look at how to use array of chars on the web. I will go into more detail in the next video when we cover loops, and I will show you how you actually can use an array of chars practically and effectively. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.